Hello everybody. I am Denis Curti, the artistic director of the Stanze della Fotografia, and it's my pleasure to introduce you Mr. Dimitri. Dimitri is a member of the board of Robert Mapplethorpe Foundation in New York, and I would like to ask you, Dimitri, if you want to tell us the mission of the Robert Mapplethorpe Foundation, because we worked a lot with your foundation for the organization of this very important retrospective of Robert. Please.
Yes. Well, when the foundation first started, Robert Mapplethorpe started the foundation himself, and a year before he died, he was our first president, and he wanted to make sure that we promoted photography in institutions such as this, in museums, and because photography at that time was still considered a lesser art, and it was always his mission to put photography in art galleries, not just photography galleries and things like that. So that was one of his main missions, plus to perpetuate his imagery throughout the world, So that was one of our goals. And then the other part was a philanthropy. So was for AIDS research. Robert died of AIDS, and the government was not funding at the time, and we did a lot for AIDS research. And then for, like I said, promoting photography. So two agendas we had, basically.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri. This is very important to understand the legacy of Robert in this moment, in this very critical moment, no? Because I think that in this exhibition there are a lot of contemporary issues, but Robert died 40 years ago.
Yes. Well, I think that those issues of Robert's were always present in his work.
Sure.
But what he was what he was most interested in was form, and because he worked from his life and what he was interested in and the people that he was interested in, those issues came to the forefront as well. And I think they still resonate because they were part of him. So today I think people still see that.
Yeah. Well, in this exhibition, Le forme del classico, we have like 2050 vintage prints. Well, this is for us is very important to understand the point of view regarding the print of Robert, and so we have a lot of different material like original letters, invitation cards, a specific book, and some magazine, monthly, and so this is the mission of your foundation, no?
Yes, we want to show everything. We don't want to hold back on things. We have a lot of ephemera that Robert kept. And I think it's interesting for the public to see this, to see his private life as well as his public life, and I think you see progressions in his work through that as well. And so it's interesting to have both things in this exhibition.
You worked a lot with Robert Mapplethorpe in his studio, like a photographer, like assistant.
Well, as a friend, really. Yes, I mean, when I met Robert in 1978 in San Francisco, I bought a photograph, which was a lot of money for me back then. They weren't very expensive back then, but still for me they were a lot of money. And I just immediately responded to his imagery. It was so different for me and fresh and things. And we met, and I moved to New York to work in an art gallery and we became friends, and he used to invite me to his studio to observe him, how he worked, because he thought I could help him with things. And so eventually I was buying the flowers finding him vases. I found most of the sculptures that he bought,
Sure.
Making some sets and things. But as friends, I mean, it wasn't really my main job. And it was usually in the afternoons or on weekends we would work. But I worked with him for 10 years before he died. Yeah.
Well, in this book of Patty, Just Kids, there is a special description regarding the atmosphere in the studio. Would you like to tell us your idea of the atmosphere in a studio?
Well, I mean, I think it changed from, subject to subject. I mean, if he was photographing a person, a lot of the times if he was doing nudes and things like that, he would do these on his own, But if we were doing still lifes, if we were doing flowers or, statues and things like that, I would bring things in to the studio and, set them up. And he would, there were times when one thing I really admired about Robert was that there were times when because I like the history of photography, and I would see something that by some photographer I admired and sort of try to sort of push him that way.
Yeah.
And he would look through the lens and he'd say, I've seen this before. I don't want to do it like this.
Yeah.
Let's switch it up. And wow, okay, So that was always interesting. And the atmosphere was, he worked very fast. He did not take a lot of images, a lot of rolls of film to get what he wanted. If you look at his contact sheets, they're very simple,
Yeah.
And so he would almost always, if he was going to do a subject, he would look at it and decide what the picture was going to be before he really started working on it.
Yeah.
So when he got it, he said, I've got it,
Yeah.
And at one point he wanted to do fashion work, and I was working a lot in the fashion business, and I'd say, Robert, with these fashion people, they like a lot of pictures because it's the way the dress falls, or they like them smiling, and he said, okay, but he really had a hard time taking a lot of pictures because he was very direct,
I'm very curious to understand if are there some important photographer for Robert, like for his inspiration, because here in this exhibition there are a very beautiful portrait of Lisette Model or many other artists or photographers, of course, Andy Warhol, Annie Leibovitz.
Yes, one of the things I think that young people will like about Robert's work now is that these were people in his life. This was his New York downtown, especially in the 80s, 70s, 80s. There were very interesting artists that he would see all the time and became friends with. He admired Andy Warhol very much. Andy wanted him to work at the factory, but Robert resisted that because he wanted to do his own work. And so I think Robert knew the history of photography. One of the loves of his life, and someone that remained a lifelong friend, was Sam Wagstaff, who Robert really introduced photography to. So Sam Wagstaff started collecting photography.
Yeah, a very important collector, no?
Yes, very important, because it was always considered not a lesser art. And here was a curator of modern art that found very interesting artists when he was a curator. And he turned everything to photography. So he was buying very interesting things, 19th century, 20th century photography. And so Robert saw firsthand all of these things, beautiful examples, because Sam had a great eye and things like that. And so I think that history, knowing that history influenced him, of course. And certain photographers, I think, of his generation and all of us, Diane Arbus was very important.
Diane Arbus,
yes. And I always think of it especially with the S&M pictures that Robert did in the 70s, because really, to get those pictures, Robert really felt he wanted to immerse himself into that culture. And it wasn't so much really him so much as he wanted to show that he wanted to make pictures about sexuality into art, and he hadn't seen it done. So to do that, he immersed himself in this culture in New York and San Francisco, and then he did this body of work, which is very strong, and then he got out of it. Diane Arbus, I think, did the same thing with her outsider people that she, but she really became their friends, their lovers, but she never got out of it.
Yeah.
She died, basically. And so I think she was a strong influence on Robert as well. Even that sort of central kind of, that kind of compositional thing that she did. But yes, I think there's a lot of influences, but Robert would always make it his own.